Greetings, fellow wanderers, and welcome to the Creepy Oz Halloween Mega Collab 2025. Tonight, we're coming to you live from somewhere back in time. We've got a ghoulish lineup of guests, bringing you all manner of macabre tales from ghosties to monsters, the supernatural to all too human horrors. So settle in, grab yourself a nice, warm cup of cocoa or an ice-cold beer, and let's get spooky. Eyes black as night. The sound of another knock at our door woke me from my short nap. The clock read 8:17. Still another hour before they would all go home. I stood up and stretched. Then another knock came at our door. "Are you going to get that?" My wife groaned from across the room. Yes, I'm going to get it." I began to walk, but the pins and needles in my right leg almost stopped me. I opened the door to see it standing there, unblinking. "Trick or treat." This one was wearing a scream mask and was covered in black clothes. I dropped 2 chocolate bars into his large, pumpkin-shaped basket. He just said, "Thanks," and walked away. I closed the door and I sat back down on the couch, hoping to maybe get some more shut-eye. Then came yet another knock. I got up quickly, grabbed 2 more bars of chocolate from our bucket and headed for the door. There were 2 of them this time. 2 girls. One dressed as a princess and the other as a fairy. Typical for girls that age, I thought. I dropped 1 chocolate bar into each basket. They were about to say thank you, but I closed the door. I'll have more time to relax. Too bad if they think I'm rude. I began to relax again, but instead of napping, I thought about the day when Anne and I would have a kid. We would have to send him up to random strangers' front doors. They would give him candy and I would... Mid-thought, I heard another knock. I was too relaxed to even care this time. Let's convince them that we're not home. Maybe they'll go away. Then they knocked again. I heard Anne groan loudly and get up. "Honey, I can..." She stopped me mid-sentence with a simple "shut up" and continued walking. I heard the door squeak open and the sound of candies being dropped into baskets. Then talking. This one was a little girl, and after a few seconds I heard Anne say, "Aw, poor baby." The girl clearly said in reply, "Can I come in?" My wife responded with, "Sure, I think we have a few bandages." I sat up, and the children, there was a boy following the girl, had come in as far as our boot rack. The girl had a green witch mask on, and the boy was wearing a zombie mask. They had no costume, except for the masks. Just plain clothes. My wife returned with the bandages. The girl held her wrist out, and Anne wrapped a bandage around the girl's small cut. The girl proceeded to slip off her mask and glare at me. "Nice contacts," was all I managed to say. Her eyes, they were black as night, and her skin, it was an oddly pale white. She just grinned at me, and I realized that something felt off. Very off. "Honey, can I talk to you quickly in private?" She gave me an odd look, but still said, "Sure." We walked into the kitchen, and we stood in front of the oven, where they could not hear us. "Something's not right here." "What?" Now she looked at me, even more oddly. No response came to my mind. "You say that every time Dolores gives me cookies or a loaf of bread. Stop being paranoid." She walked off. Then I heard her gasp. I walked out slowly, only to see 2 masks and 2 buckets in place of the 2 children. The buckets only had 2 pieces of candy each. The candy that we had given them. Strange. I didn't even hear them leave. Maybe they didn't leave. She only gave me that look again. Maybe they're in here somewhere, planning to steal something. Yeah, right. We don't even have anything worth. We both heard it. A scratching sound in the back bedroom. We looked at each other, and we began to walk down the hallway. Even though I knew they were just children, I had a very odd feeling about them. As we neared the doorway to the bedroom, a loud, growling sound came from inside the doorway. It was like a dog's growl, only deeper. "Honey, did you hear that?" Silence. "Honey?" I said, as I turned around. I was alone. In the place where my wife stood only moments ago was just darkness. A chill ran down my spine, but I continued walking. I mustered up as much courage as I could, jumped inside, and turned on the light. The boy was there. He was clawing at a spot in the middle of the room, as if looking for something. He looked up, and he smiled. His mouth was full of sharp, pointed teeth. His eyes as black as that girl's had been. I began to back up. What the hell? "Honey?" A familiar voice came from behind me. I turned around, and Anne was standing there. She grabbed the sides of my face and stared into my eyes. "It'll all be over soon," she said sweetly, as my face began to feel odd. Then I noticed something about her eyes. They were as black as night. Slowly, everything began to fade into nothing. Report. The police attended Daniel and Anne's house at 1:08 a.m. that night, after their neighbor Dolores Bridge heard screaming coming from within the house. All that was found that was deemed suspicious were masks, baskets, and a hole in the middle of the bedroom floor, which contained 2 skeletons of 2 small children and 1 silver cross. The skeletons were found in a position which suggested they were killed in some kind of ritual. After some research, police found that the neighbor Dolores had 2 children, and that they had gone missing 17 years ago.
Some say, on Halloween night, if you go past 7 black gates, you will see the 7 gates of hell. I thought it was a myth at first, until I tried it out. I went past 7 black gates around my neighborhood. Then, when I went to sleep, my dreams were of a furious fire. It stopped, and there was a man, tall and bulky. His eyes were rather squinted, showing his age, and his legs and hands were thin and looked as if they could barely support his weight. He spoke with a scratchy and dying tone, saying, "Himo klu or et newis, set hak forle." Chuckling, he opened the gate. My whole body became numb, and I was unable to fight it as it moved on its own. Struggling did not work. Without any control of myself, I went through the first gate. Gate 1. I saw fire and corpses that were horribly mutilated, desecrated, and burnt. They were sobbing so loudly that I couldn't even hear the crackles of the fire. One came to me with one eye and bullet holes all over him. He said, "We are the desecrated corpses who did not get a proper burial. We are to stay here till the judgment day." I went past him and to the second gate. It was in a building. Gate 2. I was in a dungeon. There were people tied up, screaming in pain. One was being sawed in half, very slowly, his body repeatedly healing, ready to be sawed again. One was in an Iron Maiden, with the door being opened and closed, but never causing any visible harm. A man in an executioner's mask said to me, "We are the torturers, tortured by our own devices." I went past him to the exit, towards the third gate. Gate 3. This time I was in a forest. It was silent except for a few yells. There was a man hanging from a noose. Another man fell off a cliff, reappeared, and fell off again. I began running away from a horribly burnt woman chasing after me. I already knew what this one was. These were the people who committed suicide. I ran through the fourth gate, which was in a palace. Gate 4. Suddenly I was in the palace, surrounded by emperors, politicians, and really wealthy people. An emperor was being gnawed on by lions. When the lion ripped a limb off or slashed him, the appendage grew back and the injury healed. A politician was being beaten by what looked like shadows in prisoners' clothes. A man in a suit came to me and said, "We are the corrupted people, the people who used our power to help ourselves, not others." I walked to the next gate, the 5th. Gate 5. I was in another room. There was a man tied up on a bed, being lashed by floating spiky leather whips. A woman was being burnt by a lighter, but her screams and cries were muffled by a cloth that was used as a gag. A rather large man came up to me and said, "We are the rapists and the sex offenders, paying for our crimes on Earth." I ran to the 6th gate. Gate 6. I was in another room. A man and woman were being stabbed, their wounds healing almost immediately, just like everyone else. Another person was being buried alive, and someone else was being hit and jabbed with a floating metal bar. I knew who these people were. Murderers, being harmed the way they killed their victims. The exit was the 7th gate. The final one. This nightmare's almost over. It's almost over, I said to myself. Gate 7. I was outside. There was a man wearing a shroud over his head, coated with explosives. He blew up, regenerated, and blew up again. Another one was being beaten, stabbed by sharp metal objects, and burned by torches, lighters, and matches. They were held by people who looked like shadows. One of them came to me and said, "They are the mass murderers, the terrorists, the suicide bombers. I am a shadow of one of their victims, beating them and taking revenge for killing us on Earth." I ran to the exit. When I woke up in the morning, I became horribly scared. The images of what I saw ran through my head. In fact, that was all I could think about for the whole year. It became Halloween again, and I didn't dare go outside at night. I just went to bed. It took me a while to sleep. When I did, I was in front of the first gate of hell. There was a teenager like me, staring at me. He was shocked to see me. My body became numb, and I could not control myself again. I said to him in a scratchy, dying tone, "Imoglu ot et neves setag fole." I chuckled and opened the gate for him. After he went inside with an expression that looked like he was fighting something and struggling, I looked at myself in the reflection of a goblet filled with what looked like blood. I saw the gatekeeper. I became the gatekeeper. In fact, I am the gatekeeper.
The kids always scream when they come to my house on Halloween. They falter when they get to the end of the driveway, looking up at the hanged bodies that I've dangled from the archway, their intestines spilling out and their faces red and bulging. They creak slowly, rhythmically, as the wind catches them and spins them around back and forth. Their eye sockets are bloody hollows, their contents long since pecked out by crows. Those same crows greet them as they make their way nervously up the drive, beady eyes glinting in the candlelight, cawing harshly from the big willow trees that line the path. There's other things too, in between those trees, even harder to make out. An anguished face here, a huddled rat with its awful meal there. Branches that grow eyeballs and severed hands like fruit. The many limbs of a car-sized spider are caught faintly by the light. And a lot of kids lose their nerve at that one, as soon as they make it out, spinning away and choking a woman trapped in its spreading web. And then they see the house itself, and I see them all stop, if only for a moment. Rows of uneven graves lead up to it, their headstones askew, their plots fresh dug. Long-limbed things lurk in the shadows of mausoleums and crypts, slipping fervently out to paw at the earth or scuttling away to hiss at intruders on their territory. Away beyond, hedgerows form a choking maze, filled with looming scarecrows whose pumpkin eyes flicker and flare, and then meld away into a wall of dark pine trees, their branches filled with gleaming, haunting eyes. A very few, manage to make their way onto the porch, ducking under spider webs with their head-sized inhabitants, easing around the old man nailed alive to his rocking chair, slipping silently past the hellhound with its glowing crimson eyes, to make their way up and ring my doorbell. That's the part I'm waiting for. Slowly, the door creaks open. There are frantic screams from within the house, somewhere far away, and laughter too, high, mad and wild. There is a sound of breathing from somewhere much closer, and a sense of things moving high up on the ceiling, and little glowing eyes that watch them from dark shadows. And then they see me. Every single one of them. Little mummies and ghouls and witches and superheroes. They scream. I peel myself away from the wall. A terrible, towering form in a deer skull mask. A cloak trailing on the floor that seems to conceal far too many legs. Long hands like hunting spiders reach out for them as a light ignites behind the mask and casts them all in a haunting, flickering brilliance. I begin a long, low chant, bidding them to draw closer, beckoning them inside. They bolt. Then, every one of them, candy buckets and props, thrown to the ground in their haste to flee. The door slamming closed behind them, as though through its own conscious displeasure. I go to the window and see them running in stark terror down the driveway, and occasionally looking back to catch a glimpse of my terrible silhouette, still watching. It's all fake, of course. All lighting tricks and animatronics, and a hidden speaker system performing its masterful work. All rubber creatures, bathed in eerie glows that make them seem to move, or props made very carefully over the course of the year. Their every detail perfected and made photorealistic. Nothing more than smoke and mirrors and eerie music. Or at least, most of it is.
This happened several years ago, the night before Halloween. I'd driven down to visit my cousin in southern New Jersey, near the Pine Barrens, a place notorious for strange happenings, but also a good time. We were always drawn to the spookier side of things, so naturally the woods seemed like the perfect place to take a pre-Halloween night walk. We started off by wandering down a small trail. It was the kind that looked like it'd been forgotten, or at least it wasn't the most traveled path. The deeper we went, the more the woods seemed to come alive. I always love when the wind rustles through the trees, creating odd whispers. But it wasn't just the trees or the wind that was strange out there. I began to feel watched. I remember asking my cousin if she thought we should turn back. I was half joking, but I was uneasy. My cousin laughed it off, always the fearless one, telling me it's just the woods. I really did try to shake it off, but something felt wrong. It wasn't just the oppressive silence that had now settled around us. It was the faint smell, like burnt herbs or something older. And then we saw a woman. At first, she seemed like a shadow moving between the trees, but as we drew closer, the figure became clearer, and it was an old woman, hunched and weathered. her gray hair hanging matted strands around her face. She was standing in the middle of the path. Her eyes were fixed on us as though she'd been waiting. Lost. Her voice was low, almost guttural, with an accent I couldn't quite place. I looked at my cousin. She'd gone unnaturally still. We're fine. Just passing through, my cousin said, but the words came out shaky. The woman didn't move. She didn't blink. She was draped in a tattered cloak that looked ancient. The fabric was swirling around her feet, despite the still air. You should not be here, she rasped, taking a step closer to us. Her face was gaunt. Her skin, it was pale. Her eyes, they were dark, just so unnaturally empty. These woods are not for the living tonight. Something cold crawled up my spine. This wasn't some old woman warning kids off of her property. There was something wrong with her. At the very least, there was something I didn't understand about her. The air around her felt thick, like the woods themselves were closing in on us. We were just leaving, I managed to say, grabbing my cousin's arm and trying to move, but the old woman stepped into our path further. She reached out. Her bony fingers brushed against my hand, and the moment her skin touched mine, it was like ice had shot through my veins. "Tomorrow is Samhain," she whispered. Her breath was foul and sour. "The veil is thin. The spirits are restless, and so am I." I yanked my hand back from her, but the chill, it lingered. It was crawling up my arm. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the woods were suffocating me. My cousin finally snapped out of her trance and grabbed my arm. "Let's go," she muttered, but the woman's eyes never left me. We practically ran back to the car, neither of us speaking, but the further we got from the woman, the more I noticed something strange. The trees, the leaves, the very air around us, it was silent. No birds, no wind, no rustling, just a void sound. When we finally reached the car, I glanced back. She was still there. She was standing at the edge of the woods, watching us. But now, there were others. Shadowy figures just beyond the tree line, all staring, unmoving. I slammed my door and stopped looking. We didn't talk about it on the drive home. It wasn't until we were back at my cousin's house that we finally spoke. Do you think she was a witch?" my cousin asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't answer right away, but the memory of her icy touch was still vivid. "I don't know," I said finally, but the truth was, I think I did know. Deep down, I knew that we'd encountered something that night that wasn't just a strange old woman wandering in the woods. The way she approached us, the way she spoke of Samhain, it was unnatural. And when I looked at my hand where she touched me, I saw a faint mark, like a burn that hadn't quite healed. A warning, maybe a curse, I thought. That night I didn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice in my head over and over. "The veil is thin, the spirits are restless, and so am I." I just knew, come Halloween, I wouldn't be anywhere near the Pine Barrens. But something told me she would.
First of all, I want to say that I feel like Halloween can be really scary for kids. And that's not because of the costumes or decorations. It's because you're going out in the middle of the night, walking around far from home, talking to strangers at every doorstep. Of course, it was still a fun holiday that everyone would look forward to. But I think there was a common uneasiness deep beneath it all. Anyways, when I was a kid, I would get a weird feeling sometimes. It rarely happened, but I remember every time that it did. I would be playing outside, just going about my day, when I came across a path that I'd never seen before. It was totally empty, and I couldn't tell where it led to. I would suddenly realize that I had wandered away from whoever was looking after me, and I was completely alone. For a brief moment, it was just me and this empty path out in front of me. In that moment, I would be completely overcome with emotion. I can't define it as positive or negative, just that it felt important. Those moments always stuck with me, but I still don't know why. Now, I'm only explaining this because it directly ties into what I'm about to describe. You see, back in elementary school, there was this popular story that kids would pass around on the week of Halloween. As the story goes, you shouldn't go out too long trick-or-treating, because eventually you'll reach something you're not meant to see. A road at the edge of town. It was never described in any consistent detail, but just that you'd know it when you saw it. They say this road is some kind of portal to some other place. One where everything is slightly different, like a bizarro world. Once you go down this road, you can never go back. I never really understood what that meant at the time, but this story still struck a chord with me, especially because that feeling came most often in the fall, when the weather was moody. For a while, it took a lot to keep that off my mind every Halloween, but I eventually got over it, and it rarely crossed my mind after that. So fast forward to a few years later. I'm 11 years old and going out to trick-or-treat in my stormtrooper costume. I met up with my next-door neighbor, who was also my best friend at the time. His name was James. So it's me, James, and two of our other friends from school. We went around the neighborhood, hitting all the usual spots and occasionally getting checked in on by my parents. Our biggest concern was making sure to visit the houses that always give the best candy. After about an hour or two, we had stopped at every house we knew. But being in the oldest grade at our elementary school, basically full-grown adults, we all felt confident enough to push our borders a bit. So, after James called his parents to make sure that they were cool with it, we checked out some new streets. From what I can remember, we found some good houses, but nothing all that exciting. About 30 minutes later, we were at the end of a cul-de-sac. Everyone was getting pretty tired by this point, so we started talking about heading back. That's when I saw something weird. A gravel trail leading up a hill nearby. Normally, I would have wanted nothing to do with something like that. But I was suddenly overcome with curiosity. I don't really know how to describe it. It's like I was in a trance. I asked my friends if they wanted to go check it out, but everyone felt too tired to walk up the hill. So, against my better judgment, I told them I'd be back in a minute, and I made my way over. I reached the top of the hill, and that's when I saw it. The trail kept going, leading straight into the pitch-black woods. I got that same familiar feeling, but stronger than ever before. In that moment, I had every reason to turn back, but I just couldn't. After all those moments I'd had, I guess I just couldn't take the growing curiosity anymore. I continued down the trail, following it as it twisted and turned deeper into the forest. I should have felt terrified, but I didn't. For some reason, the presence of anything else on the trail didn't seem like a remote possibility. I had no doubt in my mind that I was completely alone. For such a pivotal moment, I feel like every detail should be burned in my head, but all I remember is the dead silence and the silhouettes of the trees against the night sky. And next thing I remember, I was back at the entrance. I must have gone in a full loop, without even realizing it. Whatever trance I was in faded away, and I made my way back down the hill. I expected to get an earful about how long I was gone, but my friends didn't say anything about it. We just went back, watched a movie together, and called it a night. There were some minor things that I could have sworn had changed, like the color of my carpet and the name of the neighborhood park. But even at that time, I easily chalked that up to paranoia. However, thinking back on it now, I realized that that was the same time when things began changing in my life. I don't want to get too personal, but I've dealt with a lot of things that I shouldn't have had to at that age. I often feel like nothing's ever been the same after that night. Not only that, but that was the last time I ever got that strange feeling. I've never had it since. I also never heard that same Halloween story again. But that could just be because people felt like they were too old for it at that point. Strangest of all, nearly everyone that I've told about this has had a similar story, including the dark turn of events shortly afterwards. I've heard stories of divorces, traumatic accidents, and even the deaths of loved ones, all taking place soon after they crossed that path, and all sending their lives down a darker track than they were on. It's a long shot, but maybe this is a place that none of us are from. Even if we can't explicitly remember, we all came here at some point after walking down that same path. I try not to get too hung up about it. Whatever the case, I'm here now, and I might as well make the best of it. I suggest you all do the same. So please, enjoy the season, and everyone after it.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Isn't it so nice out? Come in, come in. I haven't had company for so long. Oh, you're not supposed to go into the homes of strangers. Don't worry, I'm safe. I won't do anything. Cross my heart. Alright. Feel free to sit anywhere. Would you like some tea? Cookies, maybe? No? Right. You came for the candy. Can't blame you. It is Halloween, after all. Before I give you any, I'll tell you a story. Once, there was an ordinary girl like any other. She loved Halloween because of the candy, like everyone else. She was also very, very foolish. On one fateful Halloween night, much like this one, she knocked on the door of a couple who had just moved into that area and said the usual trick-or-treat thing that every child said. They invited her in, saying that she'd get candy and that they were perfectly safe. She went in. What a mistake. When they sat her down and gave her some juice, she drank it instantly. After a couple of minutes, she started to feel woozy. Then, blackness started to flicker at the edges of her sight. Darkness spread its wings over her vision, and she blacked out. She never woke up again. Oh, don't look so afraid. I wasn't trying to scare you. Did I make all this up? Oh no. I could never make up anything that morbid. How do I know this? The little girl was me. My body was never found. And I even forget where it is now. All I know is that the couple that killed me died slowly and painfully. In fact, this is the very house where it happened. Now, run along. Take your candy with you. Just don't be so trusting of people. Who knows what I could have done to you?
It's the apocalypse, Pete, yelled Jacob, as an explosion lit the skies. Downtown, which was close to Jacob, was suddenly and violently filled with screams and bright explosions. Having flashbacks to World War II, Jacob began to panic even more when he saw people shambling about, going to and from the location of the explosions. Pete, his loyal old dog, growled feebly at the people passing by. They appeared to be walking corpses, and this became clear to Jacob after another bright explosion lit the area, enough for his old eyes to see clearly enough. Jacob turned for his door and yanked Pete's collar. The old hound went tumbling in with him as he slammed the door shut and went about setting the various locks in his home. After securely locking down his house and setting in place the window bars, he got up the nerve to take a peek outside. Out there, the sky flashed with explosions that rocked the building. Suddenly, a face popped up right in front of him. Startled, he fell backwards onto his coffee table. "I know you're in there, old man," the person outside groaned. From the lighting inside his house, Jacob could see the burn marks and the missing flesh on the person's face. Shouting wildly, he hid the lights and he ran to his bedroom, which was upstairs. Pete was right behind him. The man outside banged on the door. "Come out and join the party," he groaned in a dead voice. After a few breathless minutes, the banging stopped, and Jacob figured the man would bring a whole horde of his undead friends back to get him. He reached into his dresser drawer and moved away his socks, retrieving a pistol. "They've been saying the zombie apocalypse was coming, old Pete. I read it on them sites. Now it's true. They know I'm in here. Damn it, Sally. I'm coming to see ya," he said as he pulled the trigger. That final line was not his last thought, however. The very last thing that went through his mind in the last few moments while he was still breathing was a headline on one of the newspapers nearby Pete. "Zombie costume party. Downtown. Halloween night."
The head-pounding knock at the door comes for the 28th time that same night. Having to abandon my cooking once again, I promptly hustle out to the doorway. Orange bowl, filled to the brim with a variety of homemade candies made by yours truly. "Trick or treat," the toddler squeaks as he looks up at me. The dinosaur hoodie droops over his beady eyes. "What a nice costume," I sigh, grabbing a handful of candies and dumping them into the half-full pillow sack. "Thank you," he says, as he waddles down my porch steps and back to his dad. I slowly shut the door closed and retreat to the kitchen. I quickly pull my golden-coloured chicken out of the steaming oven and onto the counter, where I begin to bombard it with spices of all sorts. I still do feel the slightest feeling of guilt. I mostly enjoy handing out candies to the troublesome teenagers. As the older they are, the more I give them. It's really just a fun-sized chocolate bar filled with a dash of vodka and some other things. I usually individually wrap them with pink or purple ribbons to make it look cheesy. Ever since I began giving out these candies, which has been for well over 3 years now, no one has accused me, yet, of their children waking up the next morning, vomiting and sweating until they either drop dead or take a visit to the hospital. After all, I'm not the only one that does it in the neighbourhood. There's Peter down the street that hands out similar homemade lollipops that appear to be store-bought. I have to admit, I really outdone myself this time. The chicken looked great and ready to devour. Before I can bring it to the dining table, I hear the knocking at the door for the 29th time. The knock sounds hard, shaking the floor. Shocked, I peek through a small crack I make in the door and see a small boy, 6 or 7 years old, wearing a small little white mask, similar to the Jabberwocky's dance crew mask. He's wearing a black hoodie and black jeans. He stands there, staring at me from behind his mask. I grab the bowl of candy off of the drawers behind me and hold it in front of him. "Take a candy? Your costume scared me." He peeks down at the candy and looks back at me. "I know your secret, Anne." A ghostly voice, cold as ice, mutters. His voice shoots chills throughout my body. How did he know my name? Where were his parents? He remains silent after this statement, waiting for my reaction. What do you mean?" I stammer. "Your candies are drugged. They made my friend sick." Following this statement, he slaps the bowl out of my shaking hands, scattering candy all over my porch. The bowl shatters upon impact. "What's your problem, kid? Pick that up this instant!" I shout, stomping out my door. The child tilts his head, appearing to be confused at this statement. "You heard me. Pick up my candy." He shakes his head, backing up a couple of steps. "Well, how would you like it if I slapped your candy bag out of your hands? Not very nice, huh? Now, pick up my damn candy." He shrieked a high-pitched scream and ran down the steps of my porch and across the street. "Hey, get back here!" I shout, slamming the door behind me and slipping on my slippers. I sprint across the street and past innocent children in costumes and bewildered parents. I manage to see a small, dark figure pushing his way past others. He turns onto the next street, crowded with cars and screaming kids. At least this street is lit up. I could clearly see him far ahead on the uneven pavement. But he was too fast. He turned the next street very quickly, causing me to lose him. Grumpy, I make my way back home to see kids huddled on my porch taking fistfuls of chocolates like a piñata just burst. I make my way up my porch and realise my front door is locked. The kids, watching me curse at the starry sky, flee towards their angered parents and quickly make their way onward. Luckily, I usually keep my back door unlocked, so I hop my fence and manage to make my way into my nice, cosy house. Locking the door behind me, I turn on my porch lights and return to my kitchen. Great. Just great. The chicken is now cold. Ruined. Ugh, I don't think I could have a worse Halloween night. I decide to clean up my porch. I make sure to unlock the door this time and head outside. I hand 2 handfuls of candy and bring them inside to put them in a fresh bowl. I bring the bowl outside and begin to clean up. Finally, when every candy is returned to the bowl and every last shard of orange bowl is swept up, I feel a whole lot better. Considering Halloween night is almost over, as it's 11 o'clock, I decide to bring a chair out and sit on the porch for the rest of the night. Only a couple of guests attend, all teens. Once the last light on the street turns off, I return back inside, feeling a little bit better, but still very exasperated. With the remainder of the night, I pop on one of my old horror movie flicks, Hellraiser, into the VHS, and begin to doze off on the lumpy couch, next to my bowl of steamy, buttery popcorn. But before I can completely fall asleep, a loud knocking comes at my door. What in the world? I mutter, bolting up from the couch. I swing the door open and shout, "Go home! It's past midnight!" I pause. It's the boy in the black hoodie. Before I have a chance to react, he disappears across the street once again. You best run away before I call the cops on you. Get away from my house! With all my force, I slam the door shut and lock it. Just in case, I grab a knife from the kitchen and return to the couch, ready to scare off any late-night visitors. I return to the couch and lie down like nothing happened. The movie is now long finished, and I have turned off the television. I sleep on my couch for no apparent reason, and begin to doze off once again. I believe I got 2 hours of sleep before I heard my back gate creaking open. Now, fully awake and alert, I grab my sharp knife off the floor. Standing in the middle of my living room, I quickly flick on the light switch and stare at my sliding doors, eyes round as quarters. For around 15 minutes, all I can see is the sprinklers lying dormant in the middle of my lawn and my garden. Flowers swaying in the gentle wind, just when I think it's my mind being paranoid. I hear the 29th knock at my door of the night, or morning. It's the same knock as the other 2, shaking the floor, causing me to jump out of my skin. I dare not open the door, as the child might be there. I creep towards a nearby window in my bedroom that reveals a part of my porch. I slowly and quietly move the shades on the window. Slowly. I don't want to draw any attention. I open the shades enough to peek through without any suspicions. I see the same little black hoodie sitting on my porch steps, waiting for me to answer. He seems harmless. Maybe he just needs help and is afraid. But then again, he knew my name and my secret. No. I should probably leave him there. He might leave. I inspect his every movement, making sure nothing is harmful or will damage my property for the next 20 minutes. Just when I think he's about to get up and leave, he stands up and whispers something to himself, but I hear it loud and clear. "I know you're watching me through the window. Come out here now." His voice is soft, ghostly. His words seem to pass right through me, shaking me right down to my core. I jolt back from the shades, heart racing. This cannot be happening. I need to wake up. I scramble out of my room and into the living room. I needed to act fast before this boy causes me any harm. Without thinking, I scream, "What do you want from me anyway?" There is no response. The only noise I can hear with my delicate ears is the wind picking up dead, crunchy leaves. I decide to call up Peter for help. The only thing the police would do would be locking me up for my candy. I punch in the numbers, heart feeling like it will leap out of my chest any minute now. To my dismay, Peter picks up. "Anne, What are you still doing awake? Pete, you gotta help. There's a little boy that won't leave me alone. He's some kind of spirit. Geez, Anne, did you eat one of your own candies on accident? I'll come over there, but I assure you, nothing is wrong. Thank you. Peter hangs up shortly as I sit on the couch, miserable. Peter calls me up 5 minutes later. Help me, Peter says in an agonizing voice. He strains the words out slowly. Pete, you okay? Pete! The boy, Peter mutters, tears streaming from my face. I sprint out to the front door to see Peter standing in my lawn, cackling like an idiot. You asshole! I sob, socking him in the chest. Do you know how hard this night has been? Sorry. He holds in a laugh. It's just that... Just shut up, I shout, clenching my fists. This boy has been tormenting me for hours now. For all I know, he could be inside my house right now, wrecking everything. I shoved Peter and stormed off into my house, furious at the boy, furious at Peter, furious at myself. I climb into my bed and scream. I begin to cry a river as Peter hustles down the sidewalk laughing. As I sob in the darkness of my eerie room, I hear the shattering of glass, probably my sliding doors. Springing into action, but still sobbing, I grab the knife that was sitting on my nightstand and roll under my bed, the best hiding spot I could think of at the time. I hear small, soft footsteps on my wooden floor outside my room. I control my sobs as much as I can. As the shadow of tiny feet walk past my doorway, the little feet return and head towards my room. The door creaks open and the black hooded child wearing his white mask tiptoes inside, holding a glass shard from my sliding doors that he broke. I don't even have to look, Anne. You're underneath the bed, holding a knife, wishing for Peter. Just come on out. I begin to sob uncontrollably as the boy crouches down and gives me the good old stare. He offers me a tiny hand. So friendly, so innocent. With pleasure, I bring the knife down upon the boy's hand, creating a large gaping gash in his hand. He lets out an inhuman roar as he retreats, leaving a slot of time to run out of the room and run. He chases after me with ridiculous speed, diving on top of my back and slicing the back of my neck. I throw the boy off of me, sending him down onto the wooden floor. I jog into the living room, grasping my wound with one hand and my knife in the other. I prepare myself for the worst. What I see limping around the corner is no longer a child. It is a pale, skinny, bony monster, still wearing the same mask and same hoodie, hissing and spewing out black liquids that appear to be blood. The height of it has increased as well, to about the same height as my waist. It crawls across the floor and it gets a good grip on my ankle, taking 2 nips. I slice halfway through its neck, causing it to let go for a moment and drip black, slimy liquid all over the carpet. The pale figure squeals as it makes its final lunge at me. I plunge the knife through its mask, causing it to go limp and hit the ground. As the monster slams into the black carpet, I wake up in a padded cell, hair a mess, limbs aching. As I later learned, there was no boy with a white mask, no monster. But there were the candies that I confessed to giving out, and there was Peter, now dead. I had half imagined the events of the night. When Peter really walked away, he heard me screaming, so he grew worried. The front door had been locked, so in a panic, he smashed through the sliding doors. So basically, the boy, the white figure monster, had been Peter all along. Near the beginning of the night, the boy in the white mask was real. He really did know that I had drugged the candy because he lived next door without me knowing for the past few years, and saw me preparing the candy one day. My mind had cracked near morning. I had been taken in a few days later, lying next to Peter's corpse. I sat silently in my padded cell, admiring my surroundings where I would remain for a long time. I peer at my door, where a figure out of sight knocked at my door for the 30th time.
On Halloween of 1988, 6 teenage boys ventured into a tunnel on a local railroad only one escaped with his life, and a photo. What resulted from that innocent venture was a 2-year period of unexplained murders, which killed off a good 10% of my small town's population. To this day, no one knows the true fate of the 5 boys and the reason behind the murders that lasted until the fall of 1990. Except for me. I'm the lone survivor of the 6 who encountered the Wanderer on the tracks on that dark Halloween of 1988. It was supposed to be a simple dare. Nothing to it. Everyone had heard of how every Halloween people head into the tunnel and never come out. We all thought it was bullshit. Then again, we were only 14 and not very well learned in the way of the paranormal. The worst we expected was maybe some crazy dude in a bedsheet. However, what we found was much worse. And what we did made the outcome 10 times worse than it could have been. I guess that saying, curiosity killed the cat, really fits when remembering this story. It was me, my name's Steve, and my friends John, Andy, George, Bill, and Fred. Explaining our choice of costumes is irrelevant. However, let us note that we all brought flashlights, and Andy brought a bucket to collect candy in. Foolish Andy. I remember his death so vividly. It haunts my dreams to this very day. And she does too. But not for long. We all had dinner at John's house. It was the closest to the tunnel. After that, we played some Super Mario, just to pass the time until it was dark. When it was dark enough, we all departed to complete the dare that we had so foolishly accepted. I carried a Polaroid camera, hoping to show everyone what was really in the tunnel. We left when it was considerably dark outside. Most of the dads were parading their 7-year-olds up and down the street, getting candy, before it got really dark. There had recently been some kidnappings in the area, but we didn't expect to meet the suspect, so we thought we would be safe. With each step towards the tunnel, it seemed as if it got darker. And when we arrived there, it was pitch black, and it was pretty much only us and the older trick-or-treaters outside. We all stopped at the entrance of the tunnel for a moment, realizing that we may not make it out alive. Eventually, we hesitantly stepped inside, turning on all of our flashlights. No one really wanted to do this. We felt this more and more as we went deeper into the tunnel. It was weird though. Usually these tunnels ended around 500 feet or so, but it seemed like this one was going on for miles. We went on for what I want to say was another 3,000 feet or so, and that's when we saw it. At the time, we had no idea what it was. If I had a choice, I would wish that I never found out what it was, and what it did. "The hell is that?" Bill asked, half whispering to the rest of us. What we saw looked like a girl that had covered herself in dark paint, or some kind of makeup. She had on a plain old nightgown, and she was holding what looked like a rod or a staff. Her back was facing us. Beats me, Andy shrugged. "Hey," he yelled at the thing, before throwing the bucket at it. It clanged off her back, and rolled to the right of the track. Suddenly, it made the most gruesome noise in the world, as its head rotated 180 degrees to stare back at us. Hastily, and maybe upon pure instinct, I took up my Polaroid and I shot a quick picture of it. I put away the camera and I shook the developing picture before putting it inside my pocket. Everyone was frozen in place, looking at her, seemingly paralyzed. She lifted the rod and threw it at Andy. It was horrifying, seeing it throw what we could now see was a spear with such dexterity, as well as doing it backwards. The spear struck Andy in the chest, dead center, right through the sternum. His ribcage collapsed and blood sprayed from the entry and the exit. His spine snapped, and he crumpled to the ground. The blood-splattered spear was stuck in the ground a good 40 feet behind us. It was only a moment before we actually thought to run. We didn't even try to save Andy. I turned my head, and I saw this thing ripping open his chest, tearing muscle and organs apart as our dying counterpart screamed in agony. When it was done with him, it came for the rest of us. Bill was the next one it caught, eviscerating him in the same manner as it did to Andy. Then she got George, and then Fred. It was just me and John left. She was so close, we could feel her putrid breath on our necks. We both heard its demonic growls and screeches as we just barely escaped its furious grabs for our costumes. We kept on running, even though the lactic acid had built up so much in our arms and legs, and our breath was ragged, and we were so damn tired. Soon, we caught sight of the end of the tunnel. Somehow, it was morning, which was totally illogical. Suddenly, I heard a trip and a stumble. John. We were outside of the tunnel already, and he had tripped. I didn't even need to turn my head to know that at that very moment, he was being gored and gutted. I ran a safe distance away and behind some trees near my house. His screams echoed through the neighborhood. Everyone who came outside to see what the commotion was all about, they all saw it as it tore John apart. When it was done, it swept its eyes across the shocked citizens of my small town, and it let out a deafening roar. Something no man, no human, no animal could possibly create. It then dashed back inside the tunnel, and everyone ran inside their homes, including me. For 2 years after that, everyone who had laid eyes on that thing were found disemboweled and skinned in their homes. Some people tried to move away, but I heard them say it was like they were chained here. That thing was holding everyone here, keeping everyone who had seen it captive in this town. I'm the last surviving person who saw the Wanderer on the tracks, and my time is coming soon. How did I last this long? I don't know. But it's torturing me. Every time I turn a corner, I think it's going to be there. It's taken a hold of my life, and I can no longer function like others. I know that it's coming for me soon.
Here they come again, the brave ones. Another Halloween night and the kids are back, here to prove their fearlessness. The old house's floorboards creak beneath their sneakers. Only half an hour until midnight, so I have to work fast. I start with their flashlight, blowing lightly against it so that it flickers. But this inspires little more than a nervous giggle. 15 minutes until midnight. Time to take things up a notch. I hover up to the ceiling and will my body into flesh. My every nerve is on fire, but they've given me no choice. I force drops of blood to trickle out my nose. But the boys below don't notice. I knock against the ceiling, but they won't even look up. I thought this place was supposed to be haunted, says the leader. What a joke. 5 minutes until midnight. I'm running out of time. With the last of my strength, I scream so loud that they finally turn to look up at me. I like to think I put on a good show. I sway on an invisible noose, and the blood flows freely from my nostrils now. A couple of drops hit the skinny one with a crew cut. The boys scream and run into the night just in time. Below me, I hear the thing turn, its disappointment palpable. For now, it sleeps. But one day I will fail. The boys will be too brave, and I won't scare them out in time. One day they will wake it. Son, I want you to promise me something. Sure, Grandpa. I'm serious now. Promise you won't go near the hanging tree on Halloween. The what? The big old lonely tree sitting right outside town. Legend goes they hung a fella there on Halloween more 100 years ago. Been an evil tree ever since. How can trees be at church, I'm telling you? When I was your age, me and my buddies dared each other to carve our names into its trunk. Wasn't no troubles till Henry Phillips decided to top us all. Without saying why, Henry gathered us there on Halloween night, just to spike the tree and show off. We held his pocket knife and Zippo for him while he tied a rope around a rock and tossed it over a limb. When he was ready, he hauled himself up and disappeared into the branches and leaves. Then after a while, way up high, Henry's Zippo sparked and flickered. We reckoned he'd started carving. Except right then, we heard him scream like he'd seen a ghost. His Zippo came tumbling down through the branches with Henry following. I'll never forget hearing crack, 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 and whump as he hit the ground dead. What happened? That's what I wondered. So come morning I climbed up myself. You know what I found carved good and proper? Henry Phillips, R.I.P., with dates like on tombstones. They was the correct dates, too. Why did Henry carve he didn't? It was Tree's message to Henry. Know how I know? How? Henry forgot to ask for his knife back. It was still in my back pocket when he climbed up there.
It was nearing 11 p.m., and the sounds of trick-or-treaters had finally faded away. My energy, much like the candy I had, was spent. I let out a yawn as I turned off the television, ready to head into my room and crash. That was when I heard a knock from my front door. It's so late now. Surely there couldn't be any more kids out at this point. As I walked down the hallway towards the front door, my feet stopped halfway, and I suddenly froze. I didn't know what had come over me, but I couldn't move an inch closer towards that door. I was overcome with some kind of primal fear as the knocking persisted. Every pound on the door made me wince, my heart nearly skipping a beat in turn. What in the actual hell had come over me? I heard a young boy's voice call out from outside. "Hello, sir? My sister and I are lost. May we please come in?" But the way this kid said that, it just didn't sound right. It sounded distorted, as if it was a bad recording of a child's voice. That's when another voice came. "Please, sir, we just need to use your phone." Same thing. The voice sounded so inhuman. I thought for a moment that I must have freaked myself out over some of the horror movies I'd watched that night. I wiped the cold sweat away from my brow. It was just kids. Kids that needed help. That's all. I forced myself forward. My feet resisted me at first, but I was finally able to make it to the door. "Hold on, just a minute," I called out. I was sure that I had left the front porch lights on. But when I looked through the peephole, all I could see was darkness. I couldn't even see the street lights, let alone my neighbor's house across the road. Just blackness. The boy called out again. "Hello? Sir, my sister and I are lost. May we please come in?" It sounded like how he had asked earlier. I slowly unlocked the door, and I opened it. Standing before me were two kids, a boy and a girl, both maybe younger than 12. They both wore jeans and red hoodies, and when they lifted their heads, for a moment, they looked normal. Until I saw their eyes. My heart sank as I saw only black voids filling their sockets. A pure Vantablack. I slammed the door and locked it. All I could hear, over and over, was, "John, John, let us in." The door shook as they beat upon it, and the lights in my home flickered. Their yells turned into some high-pitched ringing. I thought I was going to go deaf. And then, silence. Absolute silence. I sat there until the fear finally dissipated. I looked through the peephole, and sure enough, the lights were on. And the children, those things, were gone.
This happened decades ago, when I was in middle school, or junior high, as they called it back then. I understand if you're skeptical, but respectfully, I'm not really interested in having a logical debate about the merits of my story. At the end of the day, either you're someone who believes this type of thing could happen, or you are not. It was the beginning of October, and my friend Kyle and I had spent several hours going through one of the local haunted corn maze attractions. The first few times, we had the time of our lives, but by the 5th or 6th time through it, it was starting to get old. We thought about switching to another haunted attraction in the area, but Kyle had another idea. He said we should sneak into the maze at the local botanical garden. We were both latchkey kids who were into trespassing for fun, so I didn't have any ethical objections, but I didn't see the point in it. That's when he told me about a being called the Clipper. The Clipper? Like garden clippers? I gotta say, that's pretty lame. What's next? Are you gonna take me to the cemetery so we can look for the shovel? You're laughing now, but I heard he stalks the maze at night and kills anyone he catches in his maze after hours. They say he carries a big pair of clippers to torture his victims, he rebutted. Just who are they, and how do they know any of this? Wouldn't it have been in the news if that happened even once? Where does he go where it's not nighttime? What about when they let people into the garden at night for Halloween and Christmas? Where is he then? We did this dance back and forth, but Kyle convinced me to go. I didn't have anything better to do that night, and we had all October to go to haunted houses. The botanical garden was close enough for us to walk there. I never honestly expected to find the Clipper. Kyle was academically quite smart, but he was kind of stupid in other ways. I suspected some kid at school had decided to prey on his gullibility by telling him this ridiculous story of a slasher who stalks the maze. As cliché as it may sound, we got over the fence by climbing a tree. We were in luck. The maze was nearby. It was a fairly warm and still night. We barely even needed our long-sleeved shirts. I was more concerned about being caught trespassing than encountering any sort of supernatural being, although it wouldn't be the first time. But still, it was honestly kind of nice being there after dark. The maze was very well kept, with nary a twig or leaf visible on the path. The full, or almost full moon, gave it a very tranquil atmosphere. We saw an owl bathing in the fountain that served as the centerpiece of the maze before seeing us and flying off, which was pretty cool. We also found a snake crossing one of the narrow pathways. Even if there was no slasher monster around, it was interesting to see how the place could come alive at night in its own small ways. I did feel a slight cold shiver a few times, but I didn't pay any mind. We walked the maze several times over, keeping our voices hushed just in case there was security around. Maybe an hour in, I suggested exploring the rest of the garden, but Kyle said he had to piss. Just go in the fountain, I told him, referring to the collection pool at the base of the fountain. He thought that was gross, so he just opted to go in the hedges instead. Well, we've been over this place a bunch of times, and no sign of the Clipper, I said when he was finished. I say we go check out the rest of this place. We were about to do so when we saw him. The Clipper, for who else could it be, merely took a small step from where he was standing to reveal his presence. I'm going with he, had been standing there the whole time, but we didn't notice him until he moved. He just blended in with the maze, I guess. He was tall, taller than the maze itself, and slender and cloaked in green robes that covered his body head to toe. I assume he had hands because he was holding a pair of big, menacing, almost comically oversized pruning shears. I'm pretty sure I always got that slight chill feeling whenever we were at that same spot at the fountain. How had we missed him? The Clipper made no noise as he began walking toward us. He didn't stagger like monsters in the movies. His gait was perfectly even and graceful. Needless to say, we weren't looking for any reason to stick around. Like I said, the maze was small, so we were out of it in seconds, but we didn't stop running until we were back at the garden fence. I looked back once before we found another tree and climbed back over. The Clipper was standing there at the mouth of the maze, facing our direction, before turning around and walking back into it. You may have several questions at this point. How could we fail to notice the Clipper in such a small maze when he was taller than the hedges? Where did he go during the day? How had no one else discovered him? How could he be real when my friend or someone he knew more or less made up his existence? Well, as the kids are fond of saying, I got nothing. Like I said in the beginning, it's your choice if you want to believe me or not, but I stand by my story. If you follow a magical thinking philosophy, maybe Kyle's own belief in the Clipper somehow made him real, but he definitely was real in that moment, not just a figment of our imagination. I actually went back to the maze years later as an adult, during the day. There was, of course, no sign of the Clipper, but I never once doubted the reality of what Kyle and I had experienced. One lingering side effect of our little adventure was that haunted houses and corn mazes lost their appeal to us. They just suddenly failed to deliver the adrenaline rush we were after. I've never brought this story up, not even to my pals who were there that night. Pretty sure they'd rather forget about it, too. I can't help but think about it every year when Halloween approaches. We grew up in a simple small town in a time when us kids could run free without worry. Nothing mattered except getting home by the time the streetlights turned on. The parks and the woods were our kingdom, and we ruled, fearless. That Halloween night changed everything. A heavy mist filled the air, like walking through a cloud. I remember feeling the water droplets against my face. Cold and damp, yet exciting. My pals got permission to stay out later for Halloween unsupervised as long as we promised to stick together. We had already trick-or-treated every house on our block and decided to continue down to the lower block for more candy. There's a park just outside that neighborhood where we rarely played. It has a swing set with 2 cast iron sculptures on the top bar. One is a lion head, and the other is the head of a clown. They are about the size of jack-o'-lanterns and are similarly hollow. Weather and time had peeled away most of the paint, making them creepy even in the light on a normal day. I'm sure they looked neat when it was built in the 60s, but not so much by the time we inherited the park. Sometimes we dare each other to climb up to the top and reach into the mouth of either the clown or the lion to put something in it or see what someone left. Those hollow heads with gaping mouths were not the only reason we rarely played in the park, but that's what took us there that Halloween night. A dare to reach into the clown's mouth. I remember standing shoulder to shoulder with my pals on the sidewalk in front of the park. The last house light on the edge of the lower block was barely visible up the road, the clown and the lion looking down at us with open mouths and peeling paint. As if the ornaments atop the swing set weren't bad enough, it was the slide behind it that caused concern for every generation of kids who played in that park. A green S-curved slide stood behind the swing set. We all knew the story about the slide. We froze in panic when something began rustling under the slide. I hope my heart never beats that hard again. We heard an unmistakable choked gurgle coming out from under the slide. Then, something dark reached out and thrashed against it. Metal hit metal with a tink-tink, and the gurgling grew into a wailing moan. I dropped my bag of candy and ran toward home as fast as I could, with my pals doing the same. I'm not sure if anyone else looked back, but I saw her. The dark form scampered out from beneath the slide. It staggered forward, grasping at its neck, and then fell. It crawled and reached at us. The gurgling cry will haunt me forever. Years before our time there, a girl had been playing alone at the park. She had put on her dog's collar and leash to play pretend that she was a doggy. No one's really sure how it happened, but it seemed that she had climbed to the top of the slide and fell off. The leash had wrapped around the railing at the top, and she was found there, hung dead. The tales about her ghost under the slide have been passed along from generation to generation of kids who played in that park. I wonder how many stories about that slide have never been told. I've never brought it up myself until now. I wish I could forget about it.
What if it's a clown? I asked. That's Jeremy, Uncle Todd explained. He's the special needs kid. Well, he ain't a kid no more. He's 22 or so now, but he's got the mind of a toddler. Parents tried stopping him from going trick-or-treating a while back, but he went batshit. Broke his father's arm in 2 places. So they just let him go door to door now. He's scary, but he's harmless if you know how to handle him. When he comes to the door, your best bet is to just give him lots of candy. Oh, and be sure to compliment him on his costume. I see. And what if it's the witch? Witches. That'd be the McGillen sisters. They're twins. Make sure you give them both the same thing. When I say the same, I mean exactly the same. Otherwise they'll start screaming. They'll scream so loud your ears will bleed. Got it. Now, What about the zombies? Oh, right. Forgot about those sons of bitches. That's the Becker boys. There's 6 of them. They're not normal. I mean, they look normal, but they're not. Kind of like barbecue veggie burgers. They're gonna try and bite ya. See to it that they don't. Your best bet is to just throw candy at their heads. Uncle Todd, I've been meaning to ask. This all seems highly unusual. Why don't you just shut off your porch light and don't answer the door? And mess with Halloween tradition? Not on your life. But these trick-or-treaters that come to your house, they're damn crazy. Aren't you worried or even creeped out? Look, kid, maybe where you live Halloween's all fun and candies, but out here, we treat it damn seriously. Well, just so you know, as soon as this is over, I'm splitting. I got a Halloween costume party to go to with Christy. She's going as a hot devil. I don't want to miss that. Oh yeah, speaking of the devil, if one comes to the door, you make sure you tell him I'm not here. And if he says anything about a deal, just say, I'm not interested. I barely had the chance to roll my eyes when the doorbell rang. Showtime, kid, Uncle Todd said. Now, do you remember everything I told you? Yeah, I replied, as I picked up the bowl and opened the door to greet the first trick-or-treater. Uncle Todd? I asked. What do I do if it's the Grim Reaper? Oh, shit, Uncle Todd said. Looks like you ain't going to that Halloween party, kid.
Four of us kids were going trick-or-treating. It was me, Joe, Gary, and Will. Will was a quiet kid who almost never spoke. We were waiting outside my house for him to arrive. I was dressed as a werewolf, Joe was dressed as an axe murderer, and Gary dressed up as Batman. Will had been sick the last time I spoke to him, so I was unsure if he would actually show up. But finally, he did. He came dressed in a generic ghost costume. A white sheet with a smudgy black color around the holes where his eyes peered out. The bottom of the sheet had the same smudgy black around it. It almost reminded me of an ink cap mushroom. Let's go, I said, not wanting to be late. We went to the first house and received our treats, but I noticed Will was oddly dirty. Had he been in some sort of scuffle before he came and joined us? He was spreading dust everywhere. What have you been up to? I asked him. Instead of answering, he only stared at me, silently, in his typical fashion. So, we continued. We went to a lot of houses and got a bunch of candy. There were a lot of people dressed as ghosts around us. After we finished up and said our goodbyes, I saw that Will was following me instead of going home. What is it? I asked him. No answer. Hey, I said again. Why are you following me? No answer again. He only stared at me through the sheet. All right, I've had enough. Take off that stupid costume and answer me. I took a hold of the sheet he was wearing. It was only then that I noticed it wasn't a sheet. It was a silken fungus. exclaimed, "What the hell?" Even though I was grossed out, I took a harder hold of the fungus and dragged it off him. What I saw was horrible. Will's whole face degloved. It ripped off along with a sheet of fungi. The top of his head was also gone. Bits of his brain were visible, but most of it had the white fungus growing over it. Will only stared at me silently as his eyes slowly fell out of his face and onto the ground. I screamed and ran away as fast as I could. Will had been like a zombie. This must be similar to one of those mushrooms that can infect insects. Like cordyceps, but for humans. Suddenly, I remembered the dust, realizing it must have been spores. Who knows how much candy and how many people he'd infected with those spores. Running home, the only people I saw around me were also wearing ghost costumes, all silently staring at me.
Ordering pizza on Halloween never really made sense to me. Shouldn't people be full enough with candy? My bike rattles to a stop at the address. I curse under my breath at Papa Vitali's pizzeria for making me drive on dirt roads in the middle of nowhere. 3 pepperoni pies can't be worth all this effort. A few seconds after I ring the doorbell, an elderly couple answers. "Ah, thank you, dear," breezes the wife, hurriedly rifling through her purse for money. "You can just go ahead and leave the pizzas on the front porch." "You want me to leave your pizza on your doorstep?" I repeat. "That's what we're paying you for, isn't it?" barks her white-haired husband. Following the instructions of this wackadoo couple, I pop open one of the lids and prepare to put the pizza down on the ground. "Wait!" yelps the woman all of a sudden, her face going pale white. "You forgot the blood." The blood? "The fresh pig's blood we requested on our pizzas. It's not on there." I guess we assumed, it was a joke. 'Cause it's Halloween. I give a nervous chuckle, expecting laughter. But the old fogies only grow more and more stone-faced. "Look, lady, I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know why they put those little round plastic table thingies in the pizza boxes. I just deliver stuff. If you and your husband really want to eat pig's blood, then..." "Idiot boy. The pizzas aren't for us," shouts the man furiously. "Therefore..." His voice trails off suddenly as he notices something in the distance. Looking over my shoulder, I see a crowd of small figures approaching from the end of the road. In the dim moonlight, I can just about make out the trick-or-treaters, their decomposing costumes hanging off their skin. What are the odds of every kid on the street dressing as the same monster?
Halloween comes but once a year. October is an orange month. The trees surrender their leaves so they may bless the small towns that honor the haunting season. Sardonic pumpkins sit as hellish emissaries, capacious eyes aglow. Danny was walking home on Halloween after collecting his Scooby-Doo comic from the Inkwell bookshop. He knew he was perhaps a little too old to still be liking Scooby, but he enjoyed the adventure and their sense of family and the spooky stuff. He loved the spooky stuff. The town had, well, really gone to town this year, and as he strolled along, he became excited. Scary sounds of screaming ghouls and wooing ghosts streamed from hidden speakers. Bunting in the shape of cats and witches adorned the frontages of every shop. Demented displays danced with animated denizens of the season. Headless horsemen, gliding ghost, zoned out zombies. Halloween 2008 was going to be one to remember. As he turned the corner, he caught the smell of clam chowder from Nancy's. He then saw, at the end of the street, a new bookstore. Opening its doors, the woman at the entrance smiled and beckoned Danny in. She was plump, a little old thing that radiated homely warmth. "First customer," she said, her accent an unfamiliar one. "That's got to be worth something." Danny went in. On every shelf there were toys he'd never seen before, produced by brands he'd never heard of before. Everything appeared antiquated. He grabbed one called the Crimson Terror. There were others too. Runny Nose, Crawling Clown, Skinny Bones, No Legs Lucy, Witch Sparklers, Dog Doctor. "You like them?" the owner asked. "They're a bit creepy," Danny replied, fascinated by one called Baby Organ. "You like creepy things?" Danny shrugged. "I guess so." The old woman clapped her hands in joyous delight. "I'm looking for a helper around the place. Are you interested?" The teenager nodded. His family certainly could use the money. The owner walked over to the doors and closed them. Danny thought that a little odd, but wasn't unduly worried. "I'm so happy you've agreed to help me run the shop." With those words, everything went black for the slightest of moments. When the light returned, Danny noticed a bright ochre-hurt glow outside. The old woman reopened the door and beckoned Danny over. "Come see." What Danny saw terrified him. Stretching into the distance were millions of pumpkins, rotten and moldy. They filled the horizon in the dark, dark sky. A 20-band moon. The stars were squashed seeds. He quickly realized the shop sat alone in the middle of the patch. "Don't be afraid," the woman explained tenderly. "Every Halloween, I can bring a child back if they agree to help me run the shop." Tearfully, Danny looked back inside the shop. The toys were all wailing like hungry babies. "You're lucky. You're not trapped forever like me," the owner said. "And I'll be sad to see you go when the toys get bored of eating pumpkin."
It comes back every Halloween. But this year, I'll be ready. No matter what disguise it wears, I'll recognize it. I'll know it by the way it moves. That slither in its step. How it never blinks, or breathes, or rushes. No, it's patient. A waiting watcher who knows how to blend into a crowd. This year, I'm going to kill it for good. I'm still not sure what the creature is exactly, but I do know almost every culture seems to have a story about it. A number of solutions are suggested. There are preventative measures, defenses, running water, salt circles, certain names that you can carve into stone or burn into wood or tattoo in blue ink. I put all of that in place over the last few months, but it's not enough. Protection is not enough. I need to hunt. Silver, wood from weeping willow, bullets transcribed with Bible verses, fire, always fire. I've tried all of the mundane methods. Guns and knives don't work. Neither does drowning or strangulation. At least, they don't work for long. You might stop it 1 year, but it comes crawling back the next year with a new face, a new mask. Last year, it looked like a knight. A small knight with plastic armor and a wooden sword. It thought it was clever, hiding in plain sight. But I saw through it. Last year was the first time I tried fire. But I know where I made my mistake. I didn't let it burn long enough, or hot enough. There was still something recognizable left over. A child-shaped lump of charcoal. This year, I'll fire it down to ash. Then I'll scatter the fragments in holy places. Lovely places. Perhaps the ocean. Some dust tossed into the water and some mixed with the sand. And when the sun rises, it will wash everything clean. A bright tide ebbing and flowing across the sky. I'm not sure what it's going to look like when it comes back again this Halloween. It might hide inside another family, like a cuckoo slipping in among magpies. The parents won't understand that it's replaced their child, or the child won't understand that it's only wearing the form of their parent. That is its greatest strength. It makes you love it. And no matter how many times I kill it from year to year, it always finds a way to return. But not this year. This year, I'll be ready. This year, there'll be nothing left.
I walk out of my house and set off down the sidewalk, a middle-aged hoodie in the sea of princesses and race car drivers. My yearly ritual is easily and often misunderstood. Yes, I know it is Halloween. Yes, I know that the cemetery is technically closed after dark. Yes, I know there's dozens of teenage squads doing exactly what I'm doing right now for a cheap thrill. I couldn't care less. 7 years ago tonight, my son was struck and killed by a drunk driver while trick-or-treating. He was out with a friend and that friend's mother. My worthless ass was working late and my ex-wife was just as out of the picture as she is now. I always liked to be my boy. On the anniversary, down to the minute of his passing. Maybe this is because I feel obligated to be there for him in death when I wasn't there for him in life. I don't know. I was never good at this deep emotional bullshit, you know. I approached the cemetery slowly and quietly, careful to make sure no other living souls are around. After confirming this fact, I hopped swiftly over the 6-foot-tall gate and landed with soft feet. My son's stone is in the back right corner, so I begin my trek clumsily and tiptoeing around death markers in the hollow's darkness. I'm halfway there when I hear the mausoleum door open. I turn directly to my left and make out a black silhouette of a woman dressed in a flowing gown, standing in the frame. She notices me. Her voice rides out slowly and warily on a late autumn's breeze. Her words have a sort of uneven inflection, not unlike the intermittent sloshing of small waves into an otherwise silent beach. What are you doing here? I don't even blink. Growing up in the inner city and serving time in the military, I've seen some shit. Least of all ghosts. Visiting my son. Brief pause. The wind intensifies momentarily, sending a few more orangey red leaves down below our feet. What are you doing here tonight? I think for a moment. I want to speak truthfully, but I am sure the spirit has better things to do than listen to an old man's sob story. I guess tonight is when I feel closest to him. The atmosphere lightens, as if I just explained myself to an authority figure who suspected me of wrongdoing. The ghost sounds clearer, less weary. Ah, very good. Visiting family is always important. I'm actually off to visit my son right now. With that, the woman takes off, for the front of the cemetery in a floaty walk. I follow her as far as my night-adjusted eyes can track. But eventually her individual darkness fades away into the greater darkness of the night. Halloween. The one night of the year where the world of the living and the world of the dead are intertwined.
There's an old, beaten-up Scarecrow in the corner of my family's barn. The Scarecrow has dark eyes, frayed sleeves, and a crooked hat atop its head. As a kid, I avoided it as its stitched eyes peered out from the deep corners of the barn into the field where my siblings and I would play. That Scarecrow has been in that dusty corner of the barn as long as I can even remember. After I took over the family farm, my dad and I decided to clean out the old barn, and my first mission was to get rid of that thing. I picked up that old, humanoid pile of straw, and I lugged it to the trash can. The next morning, I went back into the barn to continue cleaning it out. I opened the door and glanced at the corner where the Scarecrow was slumped in the same spot that it had been sitting in for decades. I noticed its face had kind of changed a bit. The Scarecrow was smirking at me with a gleam in its eye, as if it was thinking, "You thought you could get rid of me, huh?" Maybe my dad brought it back into the barn, I thought. I tossed the Scarecrow into the garbage again. The next day, I woke up to continue our work in the barn. I grabbed my coffee and I walked out to the back door of the house. But I stopped when I saw something in the corner of my eye. That Scarecrow, it was sitting on the back porch. It was on the swing, facing the house, gently rocking back and forth. I ran out to the barn where my dad was cleaning. "Dad, are you trying to prank me?" I said. "Why did you move the Scarecrow?" He looked over to the corner of the barn, where the Scarecrow normally sits, then looked back at me. "I didn't move it," he said, and he shrugged. "Must have a mind of its own." That so-called mind of its own was too much for me to handle. I'm not going to deal with some possessed, Annabelle-esque Scarecrow. I walked up to the porch, where the Scarecrow was sitting on the swing, swaying slightly in the breeze. Screw this Scarecrow, I thought. I took it to our fire pit, poured lighter fluid on it, and threw a match on top. The Scarecrow burst into flames. As I watched the straw burn, I saw that smirk and dark eyes disintegrate in the fire. And that's that, I thought. The next day, I woke up ready to finish up with the barn. I sat up in bed, and in the corner of my bedroom was the Scarecrow. Not a burn on it. Nothing. It had an even larger smile on its face, and its deep, obsidian eyes were peering at me from that corner. Must have a mind of its own, I muttered to myself.
I can see him out there. I know this game. Helpless, unsuspecting 20-something, having a quiet night in, while their folks are out of town. Sits down to watch a scary movie. The setup is just too perfect. The only chance I've got is getting the first strike in. I'm not fucking going down like some two-dimensional aging star, trying to pretend they're a teenager. Tools. What have I got? Enough, I hope. A quick check to make sure he's still there. Yeah, he's gone nowhere. I can see the mask and flowing black. Scream. The film about avoiding film cliches. And here I find one stood right in front of me. The only thing between us is the door. I'm sure he can hear my labored breathing. My not as light as I'd like footsteps. He rings the doorbell. Bastard. Trying to catch me unaware. I don't fucking think so. I can just about make his knife out, clutched in close to his robe. It looks dull. Tarnished. I'd call it lifeless. I edge my way to the kitchen. The closest thing we've got to a weapon is the assortment of cooking knives. Fine. If it's a knife fight, then I'm going to make the first lunge. I compose myself for a minute, breathing some of the ash from my lungs before stepping back into the living room so I can make my way to the door. He's at the window. Game over. It's now or never. The police never get there in time. The knife is in my hand. Its weight isn't nearly as reassuring as I hoped it would be. The handle is moist in my sweaty palm, and I'm trembling so much that I think I might drop it from behind my back and give the game away. This is it. My heart is practically through my ribcage as I reach the door. No fear. If you're going down, go down fighting. I wonder if this is how every man on point felt when breaching a room. How the brave souls of D-Day felt as they climbed into their boats. Death, palpable, real, with a face. I twist the lock. The door swings freely with a push. I taste the air. Trick! He stops. The knife. I'd never felt anything like it. The snag as it first hit. The grate as it connected with bone. The touch of the robe as my hand finished driving home my defense. My salvation. It was over. It took a few seconds for any reaction. I didn't know if it was enough. I stared into those black holes, which should hold eyes, and saw nothing. Everything in me wanted to burst. He sways. A groan comes from behind the mask. I smell blood as he falls. I stand, trying to will the life back into my limbs. This is the part where they catch you dead? Sure, just long enough for you to let your guard down. I drag him to the chopping block round back and make sure he's not coming back. It's all over. I get back inside and wash up. I cry. I cry a lot. It feels like I've just been lifted from hell. Jesus wrapping a hand around my waist when I most needed it. I've never been the religious type. Maybe it's time that changed. My heart drops, right back down into the pit from where I was just lifted. There's a knock at the door. The doorbell ringing. I peer outside and see a group of children and teens, dressed as farmers. One looks like a priest, Stephen King, Children of the Corn, religious fanatics haunted by bastardized deity roaming the fields. 5 of them. Well, there may be more of them, but that means nothing. I've done this once. It's time for the sequel. I twist the lock. The door swings freely with a push. I taste the air. Trick or treat? Yeah, I'm not falling for that one.
I'm not sure this is such a good idea, Marcus said, as he and his friends, Tommy and Lenny, walked through the cemetery. He stared up at the full, haunting moon, and he remembered why he hated Halloween so much. He'd always liked Christmas, due to all the gifts, and Thanksgiving, because of all the delicious food. But Halloween? Sure, there was always plenty of candy, and he and his friends had made trick-or-treating a tradition since they had all become friends 7 years ago. Now they were all 14, and when Lenny suggested they do something more grown up than dressing in costumes and walking from door to door, Marcus was fine with it. At first. He tried not to let his nervous energy show. No need to look like a major wimp in front of his friends. Why do we have to bury a time capsule out here? Why couldn't we just use someone's backyard or something? Tommy laughed. Because it's Halloween, dude. And your idea isn't scary. You want to be a little panty-waist nerd all your life, Marcus? Lenny asked. He thought about it. No. Good. Then grab a shovel. The boys dug into the night, making a hole deep enough to fit the child-sized coffin that they had stolen a few nights before. Marcus was opposed to the idea at first, but Lenny assured him that they wouldn't get caught. Each boy threw something of value inside the coffin. Tommy threw in his baseball card collection. Lenny threw in his collection of hot rod magazines and a hat that he'd worn since the 6th grade. Marcus gripped his favorite basketball jersey and tossed it in with reluctance. "Well, I guess that's it," he said. "Not quite," Lenny said. And before Marcus even knew what was happening, his two friends had hit him in the back of the head and shoved him into the coffin. Then, they slammed the lid on top. Marcus pounded the top of the lid from the inside, screaming to be let out. But they ignored him. He knew that someone was sitting on top of the coffin, but he wasn't sure who it was. Then he heard the hammering. "This isn't funny. Let me out." Laughter from the outside. Marcus understood his fate, with each new nail hammered in. Tears filled his eyes, and he nearly lost his voice from screaming and shouting. The boys he thought were his friends ignored him. "I want out. This isn't funny anymore. Don't leave me here, guys. Let me out, please." Shoveling continued. Dirt hit the top of the coffin, and Marcus realized that he was quickly running out of air. He gasped quick breaths as he heard the most frightening words that he had ever heard in his life. "I can't wait until we can come back next year and dig this back up." "Yeah, me too." Tennis shoes pounded the ground as Lenny and Tommy ran away. Greetings, my friends, just me again, Creepy Oz. I just want to say a big thank you to you for tuning in to tonight's Halloween special. I sure had a lot of fun putting this one together, and I hope that you all had a great time tonight too. I'd like to thank all of the amazing narrators and friends who joined me this year. This, of course, would not have been possible without you all, and I appreciate every single one of you. And lastly, of course, a huge thanks to all of the amazingly talented authors who provide the stories for these collabs that you've heard here tonight. Without you guys, the show quite literally does not go on. So thank you. Alrighty guys, I hope that you're all having a wonderfully spooky Halloween night. If you're heading out to trick or treat or a party, please stay safe. Check your mates, and have a great time. If you're having a night in, I hope you have a cozy one. Good night, everyone. Much love from all of us. And happy Halloween.